let's learn about relative pronouns. So first of all, what is a relative pronoun? In English, relative pronouns are words that introduce relative or dependent clauses. That's another fancy word to say clauses that identify or give additional information about the subject of the independent clause they relate to. English relative pronouns include who, which, and that. Let me give you an example. The woman, so here we have the subject, the woman, who, the relative pronoun, giving more information about the woman, the subject, came to the door. So we now know, because of the relative pronoun, that we're not talking about any woman, but specifically the woman, and to describe the woman is the woman who came to the door. Hebrew relative pronouns function very similarly. Relative pronouns, just as in English, introduces a clause that further describes usually a noun. And the main ways to translate a relative pronoun is who or whom, which, that, or where. Because relative pronouns further describes usually an entity, naturally relative pronouns follow a noun that they usually modify. So let me give you an example here. Ha'ish, the man, asher, who, yoshev, is sitting. You can see that the sequence of this sentence is subject, followed by relative pronoun, and then a verb. So let me give you examples of the various ways the relative pronoun can be translated. In this example, ha'ish, asher, yoshev, we're talking about how the asher is modifying a person. In these instances, asher should be translated as who. But when asher is further describing an object, probably the best way to translate asher is which. In this example, ha-sefer asher katav, the book which he wrote. Because we know that in English, calling a book who is just funny English. So let's turn to the Bible and see how asher functions and why it's important to pay attention to the relative pronoun. In 2 Kings chapter 8, the sentence begins as follows. Ve Elisha diber el Haisha. Now Elisha had said to the woman. At this point, probably you're wondering, well, who is the woman? Could you tell me? There seems to be a background. And that's the exact thing that this text is doing. The text is introducing a woman here, but remember, it's not simply a woman, it is Haisha. There's a definite article, the woman. And we know when Hebrew puts a definite article, it's not talking about just some random thing or person. It's talking about a very specific person that we both should know who it is. So let's see who is this woman. How does the biblical text further describe the Haisha, the woman? We are introduced to a relative pronoun at this moment. Asher he cheya et bena. It is the woman whose son he had restored to life. So let's analyze this word sequence. We see that there's the subject, Elisha, the verb, diber, he spoke, el haisha, to the woman. And the asher, the relative pronoun, immediately follows haisha. And it seems like it's further describing the woman. And who is this woman? The woman whose or whom Elisha had brought her son back to life. At this moment, 2 Kings chapter 8 is pointing back to an event that happened earlier in the story in 2 Kings chapter 4, where Elisha went back and brought this woman's child back to life. If you keep reading this story in 2 Kings chapter 8, you'll actually be shocked with how often this exact phrase, asher he cheya, whom or whose have brought back to life, is repeated over and over, but not always with the exact same reference point. So let me show this to you. The next time it appears, it says, he was recounting to the king, asher, how he had restored the dead. In this instance, the asher is not pointing to the woman, but the asher is pointing to Elisha's miraculous action of bringing the child back to life. But the next time the phrase appears, it is the same sequence. Ha'isha, the woman, asher hecheya. So in this example, we can say, and behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life. So again, it's pointing, the asher is further describing the woman. And the final time this phrase appears, asher hecheya, now we're going to see a different referent again. We can see now asher is modifying not a woman, but benah, her son. And the translation of the verse is as follows. This is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha had restored to life. So let's do a quick review of how this phrase, asher hecheya, appears 4 times in 2 Kings chapter 8. The first time is when the story reintroduces the Shunammite woman, reminding the readers of the event that took place earlier. The second time is when recounting the miracle of Elisha, it talks about Elisha's miracle. Well, what was it? Oh, it was this, how he brought back the dead son. Third reference is again referring back to the woman. And the fourth reference again points to maybe an evidence of the miracle. That is, the son himself has come. By noticing how asher is functioning in this story, the biblical author is repeating the phrase over and over because this is what we call a leitmotif or a leading motif or a leading theme of the story. In this story, it's using the woman and the miracle of Elisha bringing back her son as a central motif because just as Elisha brought her son back to life in chapter 4, here, once again, the Shunammite woman is in need of restoring life in a different way. And just as God was faithful then, God will be faithful again in restoring the life of the Shunammite woman once again in this story.